Welcome, dear listeners, to History with Herodotus, where we delve into the depths of time to uncover the fascinating stories that have shaped our world. Today, we embark on a journey to explore one of the most pivotal conflicts of the 20th century, the First Balkan War. This complex and multifaceted struggle, which unfolded in the early 1910s, would set the stage for some of the most profound upheavals of the modern era. As we begin our examination of this critical period, let us transport ourselves to the vibrant city of Constantinople, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, where the whispers of discontent and the stirrings of rebellion were already palpable. It was the year 1908, and the Young Turk Revolution had just taken place, overthrowing Sultan Abdul Hamid II and ushering in a new era of constitutional monarchy. However, this brief moment of optimism would soon give way to a maelstrom of intrigue and power struggles, as the various ethnic groups within the empire began to assert their claims for independence. In the Balkans, a region of rugged mountains, fertile plains, and storied history, the embers of nationalism were burning bright. The once mighty Ottoman Empire, which had dominated the region for centuries, was now in decline, its authority increasingly challenged by the emerging nation-states of Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro. Each of these nations had its own distinct culture, language, and historical grievances, and they would soon find themselves drawn into a complex web of alliances and rivalries that would ultimately lead to the outbreak of war. One of the key events that contributed to the escalation of tensions in the region was the Bosnian crisis of 1908-1909. In October 1908, Austria-Hungary, one of the great powers of Europe, annexed the province of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which had been under Ottoman rule since the 15th century. This move was deeply resented by Serbia, which had long considered Bosnia and Herzegovina to be part of its own territory, and it would soon become a major point of contention between the two nations. As the years passed, the situation in the Balkans continued to deteriorate. The Ottoman Empire, weakened by internal strife and external pressure, was unable to maintain control over its territories, and the various ethnic groups within the region began to take matters into their own hands. In 1912, a loose alliance of Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro was formed, with the goal of expelling the Ottomans from the Balkans once and for all. The city of Salonika, a key Ottoman stronghold in northern Greece, would play a crucial role in the events that were about to unfold. With its strategic location on the Aegean Sea, Salonika was an important center of trade and commerce, and it would soon become a major prize in the conflict between the Ottomans and the Balkan League. As we explore the historical background of the First Balkan War, we find ourselves drawn into a complex world of alliances, rivalries, and competing interests. The years leading up to the war were marked by a series of diplomatic crises, military mobilizations, and clandestine agreements, all of which would ultimately contribute to the outbreak of hostilities in October 1912. The key figures of this period, including Serbian King Peter I, Bulgarian Tsar Ferdinand, Greek Prime Minister Eleftherios Venizelos, and Ottoman Sultan Mehmed V, were all major players in the events that led up to the war. Each of these leaders had his own distinct personality, motivations, and goals, and they would soon find themselves locked in a struggle that would determine the fate of the Balkans for generations to come. As we conclude our examination of the precursors and origins of the First Balkan War, we find ourselves poised on the threshold of a new era, one marked by upheaval, transformation, and the forging of a new world order. The stage is set for the dramatic events that will unfold in the coming months, as the nations of the Balkans clash in a struggle that will reshape the destiny of Europe and beyond. Welcome back to our exploration of the First Balkan War, as we delve into the heart of this pivotal conflict. Having set the stage with the complex web of alliances, rivalries, and competing interests that led to the outbreak of war in October 1912, we now find ourselves in the midst of a maelstrom of military campaigns, diplomatic maneuvers, and human drama. As the war unfolded, the Balkan League, comprising Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, launched a series of swift and decisive attacks against the Ottoman Empire. The Serbian army, under the command of General Radomir Putnik, made significant gains in the north, capturing key cities such as Skopje and Bitola. Meanwhile, the Bulgarian army, led by General Ivan Fichev, pushed deep into Ottoman territory, reaching the outskirts of Constantinople itself. The Greek army, under the command of Crown Prince Constantine, also achieved notable successes, particularly in the Battle of Sarantaporo, where they defeated a large Ottoman force and secured control of the strategic city of Salonika. This victory would prove to be a crucial turning point in the war, as it gave Greece a significant foothold in the region and paved the way for further advances. One of the most fascinating aspects of the First Balkan War was the complex interplay between the various belligerents. For example, while Serbia and Bulgaria were allies on paper, they had fundamentally different goals and interests. Serbia sought to expand its territory and secure access to the Adriatic Sea, while Bulgaria aimed to capture Constantinople and gain control of the strategic Bosphorus Strait. As the war raged on, these tensions began to simmer just below the surface. In December 1912, a secret treaty was signed between Serbia and Bulgaria, in which they agreed to divide up Ottoman territory between them. However, this treaty would ultimately prove to be a recipe for disaster, as it sowed the seeds of future conflict and laid the groundwork for the Second Balkan War. The human cost of the First Balkan War was also staggering. Thousands of soldiers on both sides were killed or wounded in battle, while countless civilians were displaced, injured, or forced to flee their homes. The war also had a profound impact on the region's cultural heritage, as many historic buildings, monuments, and artifacts were destroyed or damaged during the fighting. Despite these challenges, the Balkan League ultimately emerged victorious, having successfully expelled the Ottomans from much of the region. However, this victory would prove to be short-lived, as the complex web of alliances and rivalries that had driven the war effort began to unravel in the aftermath. As we conclude our exploration of the First Balkan War, we find ourselves poised on the threshold of a new era, one marked by uncertainty, upheaval, and transformation. The stage is set for the dramatic events that will unfold in the coming months, as the nations of the Balkans navigate the treacherous landscape of post-war politics and diplomacy. Join us as we continue to uncover the fascinating story of the First Balkan War and its lasting legacy. Welcome back to our exploration of the First Balkan War, as we delve into the aftermath of this pivotal conflict. Having examined the complex web of alliances, rivalries, and competing interests that led to the outbreak of war in October 1912, and having explored the military campaigns, diplomatic maneuvers, and human drama that defined the war itself, we now find ourselves navigating the treacherous landscape of post-war politics and diplomacy. The Treaty of London, signed on May 30, 1913, officially ended the First Balkan War, but it did little to address the underlying tensions and rivalries that had driven the conflict in the first place. The treaty recognized the independence of Albania, which had been a major point of contention between the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan League, but it also left many issues unresolved, including the fate of Macedonia and the status of the Ottoman Empire's remaining territories in Europe. As the nations of the Balkans began to navigate the complex peace negotiations, old rivalries and tensions quickly resurfaced. Serbia and Bulgaria, which had been allies during the war, soon found themselves at odds over the division of spoils, particularly in Macedonia. The secret treaty they had signed in December 1912, which had agreed to divide up Ottoman territory between them, proved to be a recipe for disaster, as each side accused the other of violating its terms. The aftermath of the war also saw the emergence of new challenges and opportunities in the region. The Ottoman Empire, which had been severely weakened by the conflict, began to experience internal upheaval, including the rise of the Young Turks movement, which would eventually lead to the downfall of the empire. Meanwhile, the great powers of Europe, including Austria, Hungary, Germany, and Russia, began to take a greater interest in the region, seeing opportunities for expansion and influence. One of the most significant consequences of the First Balkan War was the redrawing of national borders in the region. The Treaty of London recognized the independence of Albania, but it also led to the creation of new states and the expansion of existing ones. Serbia, for example, gained control of much of northern Macedonia, while Greece secured a significant foothold in the region, including the strategic city of Salonika. The human cost of the war was also still being felt in the aftermath. Thousands of soldiers on both sides had been killed or wounded in battle, and countless civilians had been displaced, injured, or forced to flee their homes. The war had also had a profound impact on the region's cultural heritage, as many historic buildings, monuments, and artifacts had been destroyed or damaged during the fighting. As we reflect on the aftermath of the First Balkan War, it is clear that this conflict marked a significant turning point in the history of the region. The war had brought about a fundamental shift in the balance of power, with the Ottoman Empire's influence greatly diminished and the great powers of Europe beginning to take a greater interest in the region. It had also set the stage for future conflicts, including the Second Balkan War and eventually World War I. In the words of the Greek statesman Eleftherios Venizelos, the First Balkan War was a necessary evil, a war that had to be fought in order to bring about the liberation of our peoples from the Ottoman yoke. However, as we have seen, the aftermath of the war was marked by continued instability and conflict, highlighting the complexity and challenges of building a lasting peace in the region. As we conclude our exploration of the First Balkan War and its aftermath, we are reminded that the legacy of this conflict continues to shape the modern world. The complex web of alliances, rivalries, and competing interests that drove the war effort remains a powerful force in international relations today, and the ongoing challenges and opportunities in the region serve as a reminder of the enduring importance of diplomacy, cooperation, and understanding in building a more peaceful and stable world. In the words of the historian Barbara Jelovich, the First Balkan War marked the beginning of a new era in the history of the region, an era characterized by nationalism, militarism, and great power rivalry. As we look to the future, it is clear that the lessons of the First Balkan War remain as relevant today as they were a century ago. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.